You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week, our team discusses news and events from the past week, as well as preview the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are available on all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, Podbay, and Speaker. I'm Miranda Morales, one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, and well, it's time to bring in my two amazing co-hosts. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going today?
It's going fantastic. How's it going for you, Miranda?
I am doing quite well, only in the sense that we are getting close to really the end of the year. It's just crazy how fast this year's gone by. So that's why I'm excited. But of course, also because of all the lucha news that we have to cover this week. So with that, I'm going to bring in, our third co-host. Who? I'm talking about the one and only Brendan Barr. Brendan, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. You have no idea. I've waited about 30 weeks to do this very episode. And those of you that are looking at the episode numbers here, do the math. You'll figure it out.
Wow, that's big. That's even before we were born. Like as a podcast, when we were a gleam in our daddy's podcast eye.
It was the week we were talking about doing a segment. You know what segment I'm talking about. We'll get to that later. When we started talking about that, that's when I was like, this episode is the one I really want to do. So
well, if you are not just waiting with anticipation on what that is, and I don't know what else to tell you, because that is a cliffhanger if I've ever heard one. But yes, I mean, of course, I mean, we're also riding off the high of last week's episode, which was a lot of fun, and some other things that we have in the works for the future, for the remainder of this year. So yes. It's a lot going on, but we are so glad that you are listening to this week's show. Just a big thank you. We usually wait until the end of the episode, but I want to switch it up a little bit. Just give a thank you to all of our listeners, all of our regular listeners who are out there. Shout out to you and thank you for your support. If you are a new listener, welcome to our humble podcast abode, and we are excited that this is the episode that you are joining us on, because man, again, we got a lot of news to cover, and all of it from really all over the place too. I mean, we usually cover the big 3 or 4 promotions, but this week in particular, we got news from everywhere. So you know what?
We really do.
I'm talking about the anticipation. I know you're waiting, so let's get this ball rolling with our intro segment, The Road Back to Shows with Brendan.
Hey. So we're going to start off where we always start off, Mexico City, still orange. I'm still not expecting when this show goes up, they will have announced what the new status is. I am going to go and say it's not going to be yellow. We're going to stay at orange probably. I don't think they're going to regress to red anytime soon either, but everybody's been having trouble staying safe. We're all getting a little bit of cabin fever and getting a little too close to each other, and Mexico City's no exception. So, still orange, but other news is happening in Mexico and around the world for lucha stuff. So let's see here. the Tijuana Sporting Commission had a meeting about how to bring wrestling back, wrestling and boxing back. So they're already talking about that area as people that I used to spend a lot of time with, and some of the Lucha Central guys will know Tijuana's not that far from San Diego, so a lot of people back in the day used to do that. So having Tijuana considering doing that is kind of a big deal. Hopefully, our government makes it easier for us to do these things if that they allow it, but that's where we're at there. Sonora also had their boxing and lucha commission also said they were going to look at shows, but they're looking at a drive-in wrestling show. So probably ultimately a little bit safer than just a generic show with random Americans showing up. We're the worst. So you've got those two areas of Mexico looking at that. We had, I'm just going to touch on a little bit of this. We're going to have a little more later. AAA has made a few big announcements, including the possibility of a Triple Mania date, which would potentially be December 5th. I don't remember if that was on the official announcement or if that was the
that's just kind of the unofficial,
the unofficial one. And then a couple other things, but Dusty has that news for us later in the show in the AAA news segment where we recap a few other things as well. But a AAA performer that you are not going to be seeing anytime this year is Hijo de Vikingo, who had another interview talking. I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
he's the best.
About that personally.
I want to see him all the time, not none of the time.
Yes. And he had a hype beginning of the year. Like he
my gosh, his appearance on Lucha Fighter was, I mean, that was a star-making performance because there wasn't much wrestling going on. And so even those of us that kind of seen him, we were real high on him. That was a match we were excited about. But people that weren't as familiar, they saw that and they were like, wow, that was a game changer for some. And
I agree with you guys. It's an odd time, but I mean, he's doing it for really the best of reasons. He has a new baby boy, or he has a new baby. I thought it was a boy, but I don't want to be misquoted again. And so he's taking time off to focus on being a father before he comes back to wrestling. So there was a little interview about that recently. It was rumors before. Now that he said it in an interview, I figured I'd make it official and say it on the air. I'm disappointed too, but at the same time, congratulations on being a father. That's really awesome.
Felicidades!
Hooray!
And then, ROH and some press releases has some Lucha news now too, where they have said that they are hoping to have Dragon Lee and Rush at a couple of the upcoming tapings. They said this in a Wrestling Observer article. So those of you who worry about the credibility of our sources, I don't know. I don't know about how good or bad their total track record is, but that seemed like they would. They're pretty good.
All right.
And then we're gonna have some more bad news on shows. We're just gonna have kind of a lack of Friday Night Wrestling for a while. CMLL has not re-signed with Ticketmaster for the Friday night iPay-per-views, and they've said they're not even going to be filming for at least 3 weeks. So we're looking at November 27th is the next show it'll probably be a YouTube show and not an iPay-per-view, but I could be wrong about that. And then they'll address December from that point there. But, it's unfortunate to not have CMLL doing anything, but I like that they're kind of stopping and reassessing, because I don't think that the iPay-per-view model was going to be sustainable for much longer.
The price was a little high for the average fan too. It took like a hardcore fan at that price point.
Yeah.
Especially in Mexico, where the economy is doing even less well than the United States. That's quite an investment
Fair point.
For what ended up just being a regular Friday night show.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's if you were getting pay-per-view quality, you probably would have had more people excited to spend their hard-earned money on that. But you were getting a regular Friday night show, and to your point, not everybody in Mexico in particular can afford to do that every week. I was okay with doing it because I want to support all kinds of wrestling, and that's what I do. But I wasn't gonna keep doing it if they kept putting up the quality of shows they were putting up. They're good, but they weren't great.
Right.
And I enjoy my Friday night CMLL, but they were also putting up a free show on YouTube, and that was just as good for me. All right, so that is my road back to shows. All in all, it's kind of an upwardly good one. Even the majority of the bad news was for good reasons. So, I feel like we're doing good this week.
Yeah, well, and good point to what you were saying as far as like the story with Hijo del Vikingo. We may continue to hear stories like that. But before we kind of jump the gun and try to get some of those facts as to, why some luchadors are making the decision to wrestle or not to wrestle at this time. So that was a very good lesson in that particular story there. But next up, Brendan, you're taking us on the Indie Roundup, letting us know what's happening in Lucha Libre independent scene in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm just doing a couple quick ones. Again, I will say this at the beginning of this segment. I'm always happy to receive any links or notifications for indie events to watch things. There's plenty of room for me to put up results or on my Twitter and maybe read them on the air. I'm going to go with a couple of the bigger ones this week. IWRG had their Castillo del Terror. They had a couple of really good matches in the undercard. If you get a chance to watch those matches when they go up for free, I do recommend them. But in the semi-main, we had Capo Mayor and Super Beast against Dr. Wagner and Hijo de dos Caras. So there was a little bit of an injury. Capo Mayor, who used to be Mascara 2000 Junior, wound up winning kind of shorthanded, which always makes for a fun story. And then afterwards, he and Wagner started having words and asking for a hair versus hair match, which this is the time of year where we start hearing a lot of people challenging for hair versus hair matches, although any of them involving Dr. Wagner always get me to pay attention because he's always so fun to watch in those matches that I'm always paying attention, even if it's he could be in a tiny little show in the Yucatan. If he's putting his hair on the line, I know something good's gonna happen. And then in the main event, the match that the event is named for, the Castillo de Terror match, Capo del Sur was unmasked after being defeated as the last person defeated. So this is a little weird to some American fans, but in this event, escaping from the cage early is good. If you're the last person in there when everybody escapes or you get pinned because you can do a pinfall on the last one, you're the one that loses your mask or hair. So everybody else was less significant in that everybody wanted to see Capo del Sur, whose real name is Jose Luis Hernandez. So now we know that. We'll have to figure out if that's the name he wants to keep performing under, or if he's going to come up with something different. This has been a thing that we've talked about in our This Week in Lucha Libre segment. These apuestas matches can redefine a person's career, and so this is an exciting thing they do every year. I'm interested to see what he does because usually IWRG sets up people to become bigger and better when they lose in this kind of a annual match where there's something big on the line every year. Also involved were Hijo de la Brige, Capo del Norte, Galeno del Mal, the Tiger, Emperador Azteca, and Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. Hijo del Espectro, Toxin, and Aragon. So it was a loaded match with lots of exciting young talent. And honestly, I wasn't sure who was there's a lot of potentially good candidates for losing a mask out of there that could really be catapulted by it. But, there we go. We got Capo del Sur. Fantastic match. Again, this one was on the Mas Lucha pay channel, so you will probably see individual matches from the card turning up over the next few weeks. And the main event will probably turn up sometime about 4 months from now when they're trying to promote their next really big event. And I made one tiny mistake here. I had a Lucha Time event, and I didn't put all of my notes down on it. They had more escapades with Zorro in the main event. This time it was the old-fashioned traditional Zorro, and he interrupted the match again and sat down, and everybody cleared out, and they ended with Zorro just basically sitting alone under the light on the camera. And I forgot to get all the names of the participants down because I was doing too many things at the same time. But, again, I love what Lucha Time is doing. They're gonna keep me intrigued with this for a while. I'm a fan of Zorro. He came up last week in This Week in Lucha Libre, and then we will be referencing some of his other characters later in the show because they've been using the just shot right out of my head, the La Parca Negra character in AAA, which was a character he originated. So you're getting, for smaller promotion, you're getting a big name, and you're getting a lot of younger guys that are putting on big matches. So these guys are looking, like I said in the news before, doing some US tours. So I'm keeping my eye on them, and we definitely want to keep having them pop up in the indie roundup. So keep your ears open. Right now, we're still the only ones talking about Lucha Time, and that's really surprising to me.
Number one Lucha Time news source.
Yes. Still keeping that up.
Week to week, all across the planet, we are your number one Lucha Time news source.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's literally just a fact. That's a
fact.
It is a fact.
Undeniable. Well, big thank you to Brendan, who always kicks off our shows with This Week in Lucha, I kept jumping around, with the road back to shows and our indie roundup. I jumped ahead. Spoiler alert, there's something big happening with This Week in Lucha Libre.
I also mentioned it like 3 times during this segment, so that's.
Yes. Yeah. Just putting it out there. So keep on listening, because we got some fun stuff with This Week in Lucha Libre history. But in the meantime, we're going to kick it off to Denise Salcedo with this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Math, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions, or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's straight out of the bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
A big thank you, as always, to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central Central, letting you know what's happening in the world throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Up next, Dusty, let us know what happened this week on SmackDown and Raw.
Yeah, all in all, we kind of had a disappointing week for Lucha fans in WWE, at least as far as Lucha action goes. But in a small amount of good news first, WWE superstar Andrade and Grand Metalik both had birthdays this week. Andrade turned 31 and Grand Metalik turned 32. Both of them on November 3rd. Interesting coincidence there. Thought that was cool, so I thought we'd wish them a happy birthday. Started off on a positive note.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I saw on pictures of the La Sombra cake, which was amazing.
Yes, that was super. I need to have them make my cake next year. That was
right?
I loved it. But on WWTV this week, we had SmackDown. And first, the only really Lucha content for us on SmackDown right now is the Familia Mysterio. And they had Aaliyah show up for a quick moment backstage with Murphy, where he announced he was going to apologize to Dominic and to Ray. A little while later, Murphy's in the ring. He's trying to apologize. Ray and Dominic just will not come out. But Seth Rollins will, and he gets real with Murphy, and he tells him after everything that happened, the Mysterios just aren't going to accept him or forgive him ever. But Seth will. He'll let him come back like always, and he'll welcome them both into the fold. It doesn't matter who Aaliyah's dad is, what her last name is. They can both come join Seth. And that brings Dominic out to fight, and Murphy joins in, and then Dominic starts to fight Murphy, and then Ray runs out to get involved, and just when they were ready to hit Murphy with the 619, Aaliyah jumped in the way to protect Murphy, and then refuses to leave with Ray and helps Murphy while Seth giggles and looks evil. And so, we don't know if this is part of Seth's plan, if Murphy's still working with him, what the deal is, but it's interesting. Lots of storyline there, but no action. We had the same thing on Raw on Monday. Angel Garza had a vignette where he came out and said that even though we're far apart, what we feel when we see him is real, and he feels the same way. And he wants us to know that even when we can't share time together, we can share the same intimate feelings about each other. Then he held up the rose and said the rose was for us. And it was my understanding it was to the WWE Universe. I thought they were going to pull away to show he was, talking to a mirror. But no. And, it would have been brilliant.
Been way better, actually.
Yeah, because, I thought it would be brilliant.
What's the best turn, outside of the ladies is he's in love with himself.
Yes.
That would be perfect. Also, because we all know that we also know he's married. So, suspension of disbelief can only go so far, but, you know, it could be like, you know, Lex Luger 2.0 as far as, you know, the vanity.
He's handsome enough to pull it off, and I'd be up for anything that gets him more TV time.
Absolutely.
And then, speaking of short amounts of TV time, we had Lince Dorado and Grand Metalik. They were backstage talking about the 24/7 title, how they were going to go find new champ Drew Gulak, but they crossed paths with AJ Styles and his new bodyguard, so they said they'd go the other way and find Drew, and that was it. Like in 2020, that's how they're using like 4 of the best luchadors in the world right now in WWE. There, no lucha action, everything is storyline. Lince and Grand Metalik have been kind of turned into like a humorous storyline. Not much humor in it, but humorous, I guess.
They're trying, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying their best with what they've been given. But I was doing some research, and I found that on YouTube, the segments with Aaliyah and Dominic and Ray against Seth and Murphy, that the storyline segments on YouTube routinely get 2 to 5 million views. And the wrestling segments routinely get 1 to 1.5 million views. So somehow the story is more important and more relevant on social media and getting more eyes on it than the actual action. And so I think that's a big part of what we're seeing involved. And then there was an interview with Aaliyah where she came out and said, you know, she had no interest whatsoever in being a wrestler. And that she was just there and they just kind of wrote her into it, and that she was going to go to college and be a doctor. And so, yeah, it's just kind of interesting what they're doing right now, that everything isn't really wrestling focused, that it's all storyline focused, all entertainment focused.
So, I remembered a thing from ages ago. I don't remember exactly the date on it, but it was when WWE.com had the ECW imprint. That's the only way I remember the time. They had an online survey that you could take about what do you want more of in WWE, and a lot of the questions really tilted towards, do you want this to become more like a soap opera with drama and telenovela sort of storylines? And I remember very distinctly that was kind of the direction that the voting seemed to go. As they so since 2000 something, they've been kind of shifting that direction, and these YouTube ratings are kind of supporting that. That's what more mainstream fans seem to gravitate towards. So
and of course SmackDown's on, you know, regular over the air television, so they want to, you know, maintain that mainstream viewership, mainstream interest higher than they would on Raw, for instance. But even on Raw, they were one of the highest rated segments routinely. People are really into the story of it, but not as much into the in-ring action, which that's what draws me in, is I like the wrestling and the story supports that rather than vice versa. Yeah. But WWE has really turned that table, especially with the luchadors. We get far more lucha entertainment than lucha wrestling.
Correct.
So it's a weird double-edged sword for me, because, hey, the Mysterio family are in the highest rated segment in all of the WWE right now. And that's great for them.
That's exciting,
Right? That's very exciting, and it's not a terrible story. The Lucha House Party are in one of the worst rated segments and are kind of directionless, and those are guys that could be doing so much more if they were to focus on wrestling instead of bad comedy. And
can you imagine 5 years ago when we were seeing Mascara Dorada that this is what they were going to do with him?
No.
I could have never guessed. I mean, like
that is not the guy that went to the Cruiser Cup finals.
Yeah.
You know.
No. He's literally one of the best in the world, and he's just standing around in the back to be on TV for 30 seconds.
Yeah. I'll get
the state of Lucha Libre and the state of the luchadors in WWE, I think, is at a very strange, kind of interesting, but very strange. I don't know that we've ever had such consistent lack of action, but consistent storyline placement for luchadors as we do right now. And that's strange too.
Yeah, well, WWE ultimately is that blend of entertainment and wrestling, and always the emphasis they place on wrestling is kind of more of those big matches with the type of people that they think or wrestlers that they really think capture people's attention. Now, I think what captured people's attention varies now than it did 10, 15, 20 years ago.
100%, yeah.
So I do think there's much more of a place for Lucha Libre because there is an audience that wants it. However, I don't think that WWE still views it that way. And so they're still looking at the entertainment value being just on par with wrestling, where as fans, we usually think that the entertainment value is more of a subsidy and wrestling takes more of the forefront.
Right.
And for WWE, it's more on an even playing field. So it is very interesting. And even then, I think that the development in the Mysterio storyline now, where we have very clear indications now of where they're going with this with this romantic angle, that too really then, one, it's going to keep on going for a while, and two, it does mean that it's going to continue to have a lot of airtime. And this will be a very different dynamic of the Mysterio family than I think we've ever seen before. But also, on the other side with Raw, we have Lucha House Party and more of a gimmicky storyline with the 24/7 title, and I feel like they're probably going to get involved in that for a while. So
I don't think there's any chance of them suddenly becoming legitimate. Yeah.
No, so it's a mixed bag of things, but I overall agree that it's not on par to the level of athleticism that they have and why that isn't showcased more. But I think to all of your points too, Fox is a wider distributor of TV content, and probably does want more storylines. Raw is 3 hours, so you've got to figure out what you're going to do with all of that.
100%.
And I think ultimately WWE always will have a preference for the bigger, taller guys in those brawler type of matches, and maybe not as much on the Lucha Libre style, which is kind of disappointing because we saw the success, of not to go back to it, but to go back to it, how successful it was for WCW back in the day when they had 3 hours of content. Yeah. So if WWE could do something similar, they know that was one of the few things that WCW did right. So why not model some of that in your programming?
And I think people are still consistently hungry for that WCW style. The Cruiserweight tournament proved that. That was, well received. Early 205 Live was extremely well received. So they have the ability to do things like that. Ali was talking about that in an interview lately, that if they would send Rey Mysterio to 205 Live and send the Murphy Mysterio storyline over there, that it would instantly legitimize 205 Live and make all of those guys more legitimate instantly if they would just transfer that storyline over, and they haven't. And so I think it shows that they have an investment in people like Rey Mysterio, but don't necessarily have an investment in providing the in-ring content that, no offense to their acting abilities, but these, especially Grand Metalik, these aren't the guys you hire for their promo or their screen ability. You hire these guys because they're fantastic athletes. And I've been disappointed with the lack of lucha action WWE lately. And especially now that AEW is doing, a better job all the time of giving us lucha action throughout both of their programming, and even more coming soon, so it's exciting to see. And speaking of AEW, we had Dark this week with John Silver, number 4, Colt Cabana, and number 10, the Dark Order versus Sean Dean, Cesar Bonani, and Fuego del Sol. It was a great match. Teamwork was the name of the game in this match. Consistently and constantly, the Dark Order just worked together with precision, and they just flat out out-wrestled the team of Sean Dean, Bonani, and Fuego del Sol. But Still a great match, and if you're a Dark Order fan, this is the kind of match you want. Frankie Kazarian had a match. Afterwards, Dasha Gonzalez was interviewing him, but our boys, the Hybrid 2, Angelico and Jack Evans, ran in and attacked him from behind before Christopher Daniels ran in and threw him out. I'm always excited to see more tag team development. I love TH2. I just wish we got more of this on Dynamite, but I'm grateful that it's there on Dark to kind of set up this storyline, and that every week, we're seeing more and more TH2, and anything that brings more Angelico and Jack Evans to my TV is a good thing.
Yes.
So I was excited about that. And then we had our main event. I'm actually putting it next instead of last so we can discuss the tag team match next. But this was an awesome match. We had Sammy Guevara defeating Lee Johnson. We all knew that Sammy would win because Lee Johnson never wins. He has never won a match. But he still looks good, and he has a special way of making his opponents look great, and Sammy looks amazing. Sammy won by hitting a twist of fate on Johnson to poke at Matt Hardy before their match this weekend at Full Gear. So that was a nice bit of storyline development. But again, I feel like it would have been better served, at some point on Dynamite, because we've been kind of rushed back into that. But I'll get to that. But our final match on the Dark that we'll discuss was Jurassic Express with Marco Stunt versus Danny Limelight and Casey Navarro. Limelight is not only quickly becoming a regular on Dark, he's quickly becoming one of my favorites. We all love him.
Yeah.
And when you're explaining Jurassic Express to people, this is the match to show them. Jungle Boy's amazing. He turns Jungle Boy up to 11 on this match, and he's just insane in the ring. Luchasaurus was like a bare-knuckle brawler turned up to 11. He just looked brutal. It was an awesome, awesome match.
Yeah.
And Casey Navarro is Diamante's brother, so that's kind of a cool tie-in to the whole thing, and,
nice
having
little, family tie-in for sure.
Family reunion.
Yes.
On the show.
And it's big for Casey. I know he's very active on the East Coast, and has a really big fan base. Danny himself also is West Coast. So you got that East Coast West Coast connection working in this match. But they had themselves pretty good chemistry as well.
They really did. I mean, it was very impressive for a first time pairing.
Yes.
I mean, they wrestled like a more seasoned tag team, and this was an incredible match. This was the match of the night for me easily on Dark. Awesome match. Everybody should check it out. It's free on YouTube. Like, no reason not to check it out.
Yeah, it's I just have to echo the match itself was really awesome, and just to see, of course, the Jurassic Express. I mean, they continue to have some of the funnest matches in all of AEW, and I'm so glad that they have this company in particular to showcase that, because we even talked about right now with WWE and them not really giving people time to have these kind of fantastic matches. And that's one thing AEW does well, even if it's on a format like Dark. But also for people like Danny and Casey to have, avenues to work for the company. But like I said, I know there's big fan bases of both who are very happy to see them on Dark. And that is kind of one of those funner things about Dark, is the way that they showcase talent from across the independent scene in the U.S. And even though you kind of know how these matches go, it still is very cool to see them work so well. And so, still just big kudos to this episode of Dark, but in that match in particular.
It was just amazing. And like I say, like when you want to explain Jungle Boy to people, that's the Jungle Boy of this match. When you want to explain Luchasaurus to people, that's the Luchasaurus of this match. But they couldn't have done that without Limelight and Navarro. Like, those guys were essential ingredients in that to making it work, because you have to make your opponent look good. Yep. And they really did a fantastic job. And this is an excellent match. And speaking of the kind of independent wrestlers that get featured in AEW, the next night on Dynamite in the crowd, we had American Kaiju Lindsay Snow.
Yes! So, crazy!
I know, I'm so excited. I don't know if it's just a cameo, possible hint to her showing up on Dark or Dynamite. They need some women's wrestlers, and they need the American Kaiju.
They need the American Kaiju. Like, what campaign? What kind of flyer do I sign? What petition do I sign in order to vouch that? Because they need the American Kaiju Lindsay Snell on the AEW women's roster.
They do.
I have every confidence they're going to put her on TV, and on Dark, and once they do, it will be undeniable. She's just got such star power,
such a cool look, Yeah, and the charisma, and she's got everything that's necessary, and she's one of the few that I'm surprised aren't more important on a national level. So I think this will open that up pretty immediately. And
yeah, she's just been waiting on a break, as I can tell. So like having her on camera means that she's talking to somebody, and it's just a matter of time. So, either there or on Primetime Live, which we're going to talk about later, we're going to see her and she's going to break out. And I'm okay with either of those choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, I am so excited to see that. And in-ring matchups in Dynamite this week, we had the big MJF and Wardlow versus Inner Circle thing with Sammy Guevara and Ortiz versus MJF and Wardlow. And I know I use the phrase a lot, but Sammy really looked like a star in this match. He is so close to being the guy. Like, I know a lot of people talk about MJF and they think MJF is going to be the next big guy, but I think Sammy's going to be the first big homegrown-ish star for AEW. He reminds me of like a Nation of Domination era Rock, like when he had a team of older, more seasoned guys with him to kind of help him. And that's where Sammy's at. And I mean, like, he's the standout young guy. I think he has the ability to be more than wrestling someday. And he's going to be one of their biggest deals. Sammy is so good. Anyway, throughout the match, he was just fantastic. There was another fun lucha-esque spot towards the end of the match. He was on the outside, and he was kind of fighting with Serpentico. As Serpentico, he was there to distract him. But it wasn't Serpentico. He removes the mask, and it's Matt Hardy stealing a page from one of the most tired tropes in all of wrestling. And then Matt, tosses a chair at Sammy, hits him in the face. MJF hits the salt of the earth on Ortiz and then refuses to break it after the bell, kept working the arm for several beats. Afterwards, he attacked Jericho at the announcer's table, but in my favorite moment of the whole match, Aubrey Edwards was not only able to push Wardlow back, but to pull MJF off of Jericho by herself. And that was both funny and it made her look badass. So I liked that.
She really is that strong. She's a muscle monster.
You don't need to suspend my disbelief on that. I just straight up believe it.
She looked so tough. I mean, she looked as tough as any of the wrestlers last night. And I liked that. I like a referee that's not afraid like that and will grab some of the biggest guys and fearless. It was so cool. And then my favorite. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Keep going. I'll swing back around. Keep going.
My favorite part of the whole night, though, they announced Phoenix versus Penta El Cero Miedo 2 next week on Dynamite.
Número dos.
Yeah. Yes.
El dos.
And
El
so
siguiente.
exciting. But yeah, aside from that, no real lucha stuff going on this week for Dynamite. But we do have Full Gear this weekend. I feel like they rushed the build to that it just didn't feel very important, Full Gear this time comparatively. But we have Sammy versus Matt Hardy again. No stipulations this time as there were last time.
Right.
There's been a stunted build because of the injury, and I just don't even know if people still care about this feud after the injury.
So this is why I figured I could swing back around 100% with Sammy looking amazing in that match. And then the run-ins that they had between, him, Hardy during the private party match. Well, for a little bit of the build. They're trying to make him look big so that he can be a big credible star on that. So that was kind of the point that I was going to make here, is MJF is a known quantity. They know he can be big anytime they want to give him the trigger. Jericho just needs to get out of the way, and MJF will be that guy.
Yeah.
But by putting Sammy in this spot where he's working with Hardy and he's working with Jericho and he's working with MJF and all of this, they're making him so that he will be that guy at that next level.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
and it just seems like everybody believes in that. And I think that's what we're going to see coming out of this. We haven't gotten a lot of build up for their match at Full Gear, but because we haven't gotten a lot of hype and you've got two guys that can do some great things, I think we're going to see an attempt at show stealing. And based on a Twitter comment, I'm wondering if they're going to maybe do this a little more cinematic too, because...
because I was going to ask if it's still being called the Elite Deletion match.
Yes.
Yes, right. And I've also heard it's going to be at the Hardy compound. So that was the tweet I was going to refer to, is Matt said, I'll see you at the compound this weekend on Twitter when he's... and with a tag to Sammy. So it sounds like that they're going to do a cinematic match instead, which much better. Yeah. I was so worried for Matt Hardy. We bought the pay-per-view, we watched it live, and I thought he died when his head, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And like it was really scary. And so, I think a cinematic match, especially for his first match back, is a lot better. And kind of helps protect him, but it also gets people used to seeing him in action again. And they've completely overhauled their medical team and everything now, and they have an independent third party. And,
good. It's lessons learned, and so. But I also agree. Maybe a cinematic match is a lot better suited for them after what happened last time. 100%, that it's a lot safer. It's going to be perceived and received better. And that too. I mean that they can have more precautions, especially for Matt if needed. And Sammy's good at that stuff too. I mean, that's one of the things, is that Sammy's very talented as a wrestler, athletically, but he also has a great personality, so I do think that in the sense that, with cinematic matches, you usually have to pull out more of your character and kind of shine that more. So I do think if they are going that route, it's going to fit Sammy very, very well for him as well. So I think it's a win-win for both.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, like I say, this is the beginning. This is the Nation of Domination era Rock. We're already seeing him on his way up, but he's going to be the guy very soon, and I can't wait. But speaking of Wednesday nights, now, Miranda, I think you have some NXT news for us from NXT's show.
Yeah, so kind of in the same tone as we've been talking about. Not a whole lot of lucha action, and we're still having the hangover from Halloween Havoc last week, which was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing, but not a lot of lucha libre content. This week. We did start off the first match of the night, Dakota Kai, with Raquel Gonzalez defeating Ember Moon. We just saw Raquel more just as accompanying Dakota. But Dakota did win and did defeat Ember Moon. So we, don't know. It kind of sounds like based off of, two things that happened later on in the show. We may not be getting that Raquel Gonzalez Rhea Ripley rematch at this time.
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet, but the fourth match of the night was Toni Storm versus Shotzi Blackheart. So this was a match that Mr. Regal let Shotzi Blackheart pick herself as a thank you or as a token of appreciation for hosting Halloween Havoc, or even just a residual, Shotzi's choice. Not quite sure, however.
I prefer that, because that's what I wanted to see on the wheel. Yeah, with Shotzi's choice.
Next time. Toni Storm ended up with the win, but that was because Shotzi Blackheart was distracted by Candice LeRae when Candice was up on the screen with Shotzi's tank out in the middle of the road.
This is an outrage. Outrage.
The distraction
audacity.
happened while the match was happening as far as Candice interrupting. Tony picked up the win, but then continued on after the match where Candice LeRae was, supposedly trying to help protect Shotzi's tank, but a car pulled up and, well, wouldn't you know, it was actually Candice's ride. And Candice ended up almost steamrolling because she had a big truck, big Hummer something, ran over Shotzi's tank, the infamous tank that she's brought to the ring many a time. And this seems to
the tank.
Everybody loved the tank, except maybe Robert Stone.
Yeah,
yes.
That's exactly what I thought. It's the only person.
But that tank made Robert Stone. He knew
it made him a star.
That tank made him a star.
It did more for him than the golf cart did for Sammy, for sure.
So that is some payback from Candice to Shotzi. Somehow it seems like she blamed Shotzi for her loss during last week's Halloween Havoc when she was facing Io Shirai for the NXT Women's Championship. So it seems like we're going to now be getting a program between Shotzi Blackheart and Candice LeRae, which I am not mad at all.
No. Exciting.
We also had a segment between Legado del Fantasma and Jake Atlas. It was earlier in the day when Legado del Fantasma was coming into the arena, and they were just very casual in their sharp suits coming in when a car pulled up and out came Jake Atlas. And I believe it was Raul who first approached the car. When he did, Jake Atlas took out a bat and so took Raul out. And then after that, confronted the rest of Legado del Fantasma, but ended up taking off, going back to the car and taking off. So it seems like Jake Atlas is trying to even the odds in finding Legado outside of their comfort zone of the ring, which again plays on Legado's strategy, the numbers game outside of the ring.
Yeah.
Every time they take the action outside of the ring, that's when they're able to capitalize and turn over the flow of a match. So seems like we're going to continue to get Jake Atlas trying to get to Santos Escobar and the rest of Legado del Fantasma in the future. But, again, very limited Lucha Libre action, but building up to some, new storylines, again, with Shotzi and Candice LeRae, and then a continuance of what we've seen with Legado del Fantasma and Jake Atlas.
So I wanted to say on the Jake Atlas thing, I really liked how, to your point, that they kept Legado del Fantasma's thing of being good outside and the chaos outside the ring strong while making Atlas look good, because what happened was, for those that didn't see the segment, Atlas got the better of one or two of the guys, but when it came time for, Escobar, he just stood there he just stood there and looked at him, and that's when Atlas backed down. You can only make speculation as to what Atlas was thinking at the time. Maybe this is not such a good idea, or maybe I've made my point. Who knows? But that was when he backed down, which left the Legado del Fantasma looking good. They didn't look like they got punked out by one guy, even though they're three guys. He got his licks in and he got out of there, and I really respected that. But there was another segment that they built to that I don't. Were you gonna mention this one, Miranda?
No, go ahead.
You knew I was gonna have to bring it up. Shia Lee was backstage, and she demanded a match from Mr. Regal with Raquel Gonzalez.
Yep.
And
that'd be awesome.
Right? So tiny bit behind the scenes, they both showed up at the Performance Center at the same time. So they probably worked out a lot together. And that just spells out a chance for a really phenomenal match where hopefully they both get to really showcase how good they are. And it's going to be on television. It's not going to be the next big feud because we're clearly building to Raquel and Rhea Ripley 2, at some point down the road, but you got to make her look good again before you do that, or people aren't going to be into it. So I just super excited. I saw that was the first clip I watched, because I watched AEW and catch NXT later.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
And that was the very first thing that I saw. Like, Google and YouTube know me so well that it was waiting for me. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'm watching Sayali challenge Raquel Gonzalez, and I am going to watch it like 3 or 4 times because I'm that excited.
Yes. Yeah, and Rhea Ripley seems like she's going to be in a match with Io Shirai, and so they're going to revisit that. So you're right. We may have a separation, or we are going to have a separation of Rhea and Raquel for now, but I'm sure all roads will lead back to another match with them. And I think too, it will be better suited for Raquel. And hopefully she could win that. But, lots of storyline building this week. It feels like it's kind of a little bit of a reset after Halloween Havoc. So we will continue to see that. And the next NXT takeover is scheduled for December. Trying to remember the exact date. But we will be getting that, in just probably about 6 weeks, less than that. So the next NXT takeover coming in December. So again, we're going to be building up stories and programs to that. And don't forget that you can find the results for NXT, AEW, Raw, and SmackDown on luchacentral.com. Every week they release the results, and plus include some videos of the highlights of the night. So make sure that if you are wanting results, you need to know results, you go to luchacentral.com.
That Aaliyah interview is on Lucha Central too, so
yes.
Yeah, lots of ways to get your lucha.
Lots of ways, yes, absolutely. Brennan, you are going to lead us next into some CMLL news.
Absolutely. The much anticipated Rey del Inframundo event finally happened. It was a little more low key compared to previous years. Probably something to do with COVID and like last minute prep, but we still got it. We still had all of the fun things. We had several wrestlers dragged to hell, which is, sounds harsh, but that's kind of one of my favorite parts. I'm just saying. I honestly, I think that if they're going to do this, the fans are savvy enough that they could have the same guys come out and use different names, and that would explain why we only see Mr. Bad Guy once a year, right? Like he comes, he loses, he goes back to hell, like it's fine, you know. But,
it's fine.
He tries every year and he just can't get that break like Linus in the pumpkin patch.
That's an analogy.
So we had 5 matches. One, of course, was going to be our main event, Terrible and Euphoria, for the Rey del Inframundo Championship. But we started off with Chamuel and El Guapito against Tomo and Microman, and this is really good stuff. Like, those guys always put their everything into these matches. I did enjoy this match a lot, even though the Rudos did take it. They won the first and third falls, so they seem to really like putting Chamuel in the winning position a lot, making him look stronger, even though he's also usually the biggest guy in the ring. So I don't know, maybe that's some Vince McMahon style booking or something. But and then you had a tag team match with El Audaz, Espiritu Negro, Rey Kamata against Dark Magic, Okamura, and Ben Ellis. This is unfortunately a very Friday Night CMLL matchup where they take an established tag team and they throw somebody else in there and say, you'll do fine. And then they put some adequate guys on the other side, and you know who's going to win, and it's just not as exciting as it could be because of all of these elements where they just seemingly put no effort into it. But the and I don't want to make that sound like the wrestlers. The wrestlers are still going 110%, and I love that. But whoever's booking it and whoever came up with the idea of like, let's just grab somebody from the locker room and throw them in with another tag team and call it good. So the as you might guess, the Technicos won this and falls 2 and 3. So Audaz, Spiritu Negro, Rey Kamada beat Dark Magic, Okamura and Vangelis. It was, it's fun. It was fine. I never going to complain about seeing Okamura dragged to hell. And then we had Reina Isis and Uvia for the Mexican women's title. This was Reina Isis's first defense. She lost the first fall, then came back strong for the next 2. Again, this was for where the ladies division has been at. This was a better match than I was expecting, and I'm happy for that. I really love that the wrestlers that they're putting on television right now are definitely taking advantage of the opportunities to step up, even if they're in somewhat predictable matches. And then we had a 6-man or trios match. Angel de Oro, Forestro, God, I'm slaughtering this today, I'm sorry. Nebula Roja against Negro Casas, Sobranario Jr., and Titan. This was Relevos Incredibles match. So you have Technicos and Rudos on the same teams. That's why things sound a little weird with these names if you're paying attention to the CMLL lineups. Angel de Oro, Forastero, and Nebula Roja managed to get the win on this. This actually was more about the teams not working with each other than who won and lost, which is booking that they did again last week with the Guerreros teasing a breakup that we then didn't see much of. Or maybe that was 2 weeks ago now. I'm losing track. But so you had people arguing with each other, shoving each other, but then they did tag team moves. And, it was interesting. I was interested in this match more for the storytelling that might happen further down the line than the final falls. But, Angel de Oro, Forastro, Nebula Roja again came out on top on that one. And finally, we had Terrible and Euphoria for the Rey del Inframundo tournament. And, this was, so the Lucha Blog guy and Rob Viper both were talking about this. This is, an interesting matchup on paper because you have two guys that you almost never wrestle against each other, but they're used in almost exactly the same way the rest of the year, which is to make other people look good. And, that's kind of what happened was like they both were trying to make each other look good by doing the things the way they normally do, and nobody really kind of shined on their own. Terrible won and is now the new Rey del Inframundo champion, and it was very cool. And as Terrible, the last faction that he belonged to was the Ingo Bernables. I was still a little excited for him on that, but for me I was disappointed because there were so many other options in that Cibernetico that were better. But it was a good match. It was a solid match, and I did not hate it. That was our CMLL event. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to have any CMLL pay-per-views for 3 weeks. And they're not going to be doing new YouTube stuff, so we will probably only be talking about interesting news and developments on contracts for CMLL for a couple of weeks, and then I will definitely have my excitement back when they come back, because it's what happened last time. They were gone for a while. I really missed it, and I loved the heck out of that first show back, and I'm expecting that's where I'll be at again when they come back. There it is, CMLL.
So we may not be getting some CMLL for a little bit, but we are getting another promotion. Well, who's doing a restart? That's right. As we mentioned last week, MLW is returning. for their restart on Wednesday, November 18th. Their show is going to be on Fubo Sports and YouTube. And also fans can catch it again on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. on beIN Sports channel. But this week some big announcements came out of MLW as they started to announce some of the wrestlers that are going to be a part of the restart. And we got some really good lucha libre names in the mix. With the first one who they announced was the Laredo Kid. And this was big because he's just had an amazing career, of course, but also just recently too with AAA and Auto Luchas, a really, really good match. And I really like how MLW is presenting all of the wrestlers that they're bringing in with the restart. On social media, they've created these get to know pages for each wrestler. And with the first one being Laredo Kid, if you are not familiar with his style or lucha libre, there's some really great pieces of information and a little bit of a teaser on there too that we'll get to. But real quick, some of the other names that they've announced for it, as far as Lucha Libre related names, are Zenshi and LA Park Jr., each of them with their own get to know you pages. But going back to Laredo Kid, it will list their fighting styles. So of course it identifies his fighting styles: Lucha Libre, hometown, nickname, status, so it does list him as the AAA Cruiserweight Champion. His signature move, which is the Laredo 630. And then there's some interesting tidbits here, and they do these on purpose, because you never know what's going to happen, but they reference what's next for Laredo Kid. So one thing they mention is unifying the MLW World Middleweight and AAA Cruiserweight titles? ? Exclamation point. And what's next? Defend the AAA Cruiserweight title in MLW, which leads also to some information that MLW announced this week, mentioning that Conan, who is part of MLW and the co-founder of AAA, is in talks with Court Bauer about possibly having the MLW titles as part of the restart, the title defenses as part of the restart. So it seems like MLW is teasing we are going to get a AAA title defense at the restart, and what better way to do it with the Cruiserweight champion?
Yeah, that's so cool.
I mean, anybody on the MLW or AAA side being in a televised match for that championship is just instant tune-in from me. I already am going to be watching most of the MLW stuff, but I will go out of my way to see that live as it's happening because I don't want to miss out on. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Wednesdays are going to be a busy night for people.
Yep.
You know, I just saying it's going to be busy, but you know, it's definitely worth it. And it's again, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Fubo Sports and YouTube. So that's a big advantage for people who may not, have access to, either, USA or TNT, having MLW return on YouTube, that's a good market to be in. And of course catching it again on Saturday nights, on beIN Sports is also a great, it's also just a great time slot, for those who watch on Saturdays. But yeah, I mean, AAA really starting. I mean, again, this was the first wrestler that was announced for the restart. So they really wanted to make a big impression with, this announcement and really putting some oomph into the restart. Since then, again, they've released a lot. The first three actually all were luchadors, with Zenshi and LA Park Jr. So that was also kind of an interesting tidbit is that, the first three wrestlers that they announced for the restart were all luchadors. The rest have been kind of mixed as far as their styles. And of course you'll see some regulars as well. People like, the open weight champion Alex Hammerstone, The World Heavyweight Champion, Jacob Fatu. Simon Gotch has been announced as well. Jordan Oliver. Joseph Samuel, so Tom Lawler, all of the names that in MLW, those names are being announced and released. But if you are a Lucha Libre fan and you haven't watched MLW in quite a while, which again for most of us it's been a while, they are trying to capture your attention with the restart. So make sure you check out the restart coming up very soon on Wednesday, November 18th.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, speaking of AAA, Dusty, you have some news about Auto Lucha Dia de los Muertos.
Yes, yeah. This week we had the return of Auto Luchas. Big week for it. Had a special theme for Dia de los Muertos. I'm going to run through some of the results. I'm only going to review a couple of the matches so that we have time to kind of talk about the announcements at Auto Luchas. So here we go. In results, we had Hades and La Parquita defeating Lady Maravilla and La Parquita Negra. And it's important to know these are the mini versions, the junior versions, the La Parquitas. And then we had Lady Shawnee defeating La Hydra and Big Mommy after submitting La Hydra. Carta Brava Jr. and La Parca Negra defeated Dinastia and Maximo. That was a great match.
Yeah.
The match of the night for me was Laredo Kid defeated Miss Disease Jr. and Octagon Jr. This match is so good. Like, it wasn't quite as good as the singles match between Laredo Kid and Octagon Jr. from the previous Auto Lucha showing, but that's like saying this is a 95 instead of 100. It's still an A, it's just not an A+. Miss Disease Jr. was the weakest link in this trio for me, but he's also kind of the newest, and he's had the least exposure in the ring compared to these two, and he was still better than 95% of what you see. Yeah. That's not counting him down at all. Steel sharpens steel, and he needs a chance to work with talent at this level to rise up to the level of Laredo Kid or Octagon Jr. And I mean, Laredo Kid makes everybody look good, but these guys look incredible on their own. He's definitely rising up. I don't know if we'll see him get a new character or mask and kind of rise up out of the Miss Disease Jr.
They gave him that so he could rise up. So they're going to keep him as Miss Disease for a while. Like, that's where I feel they're at. And
that's kind of what I was feeling. His investment in his look and his gear is top notch. So, and he's making a name under Miss Disease Jr. Yeah. And so I think it'll really work for him. But he's an amazing talent. We're going to see more and more of him at the top of the card, I think. Laredo Kid is not a AAA guy. He's an independent guy. So they need more AAA guys with this level of talent. And Miss Disease Jr. could be that guy. Everybody should check this match out. It's free on Facebook Watch, and it is so good. Like, it's a match of the year contender, and definitely would be Lucha match of the year if it had been for the previous outing between Laredo Kid and Octagon Jr. And then our main event, Chessman defeated Tejano Jr. and Psycho Clown after fouling Tejano with a low blow. I'm not kidding. This is the best Psycho Clown match I've seen in a long time, and maybe ever. And I say really that as a Psycho Clown fan. Like, it is really good. He was just fantastic throughout the entire match.
I say this as a non-Psycho Clown fan. Like, this was a very enjoyable match with Psycho Clown in it.
It was, yeah. The finish wasn't to my liking. There was an unmasking of Psycho Clown, a low blow foul on Tejano the ref didn't see, but everything else was fantastic, and it just makes me so excited for Chessman versus Picano at Triple Mania whenever that happens. And during the Auto Lucha's Dia de los Muertos show, it was announced that they had some signings. Lio Rush, who is having a really big week this week, will be wrestling for AAA soon. In addition to Carlito with his cousins Primo and Epico Colon. I'll talk more about Leo soon, but I think it'll be very interesting to keep an eye on AAA's North American ambitions in the near future. They're getting a roster of guys together who are both very talented and understand the American style, how to get the American promo over. And this is a sign of ambition that I'm excited about. Lio Rush doesn't do much to push your needle in Mexico, but there is a lot of name recognition elimination for Lio Rush in the United States. So I hope that this is kind of branching out in a way. Triple Mania is still unofficially on December the 5th, and AAA didn't use this opportunity to announce any more shows. There's at least a month until the next show then, maybe longer if Triple Mania's been postponed. But AAA have been real serious when they talked about wanting to protect the talent from COVID-19. And it's just tough to tape matches in those situations and protect everyone. So I'm thinking that the lack of shows may be to build up some time in between now and then, so if anyone's ill, they can get healthy, and that they'll probably... Mr. Iguana mentioned in our interview that AAA was still paying everyone, so I think that we may find out they paid everyone to stay home and stay in their AAA bubble so that Triple Mania pulls off.
That's what I was thinking, is if they're taking the same 3 weeks off that CMLL is, then they're bubbling so that they can do a December 5th show.
Yeah. That's my thoughts exactly. So I'm really looking forward to that. A lot of big news for AAA there, even though there's not a whole lot of news in it. It's definite signs of optimism from AAA. And then we also had New Japan and smaller regional wrestling news. They're going to have the Super J Cup tournament next month in the United States. It is going to be so good. It's an 8-man single elimination tournament airing live on December 12th on New Japan World. This year's field features former Lucha Underground and WWE stars, as well as wrestlers representing other promotions like MLW and Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor. Our lineup of entrants is TJP, ACH, Ray Horace, Blake Christian, Clark Connors, El Phantasmo, Dashin Chris Bay, and once again, Lio Rush. So that's pretty exciting. A huge part of Leo's appeal is his microphone abilities. And, I guess he asked for his release through WWE because of all the kind of backstage issues he had there. But I think he was very wise to bet on himself, because now, just this week, it was announced he'll appear at AAA, MLW, and New Japan. And so hopefully that kind of opens the door to AAA working with New Japan a little bit, or maybe we'll see more luchadors in Japan outside of the CMLL roster. We haven't seen AAA in Japan since the Star Battle, so it would be nice to see a lot of commingling going on there. I really think, I'm very excited about Chris Bay personally, so excited. Ray Horace is going to be, you knew him as El Dragon Azteca on Lucha Underground, and you've seen the incredible things he's capable of. He is apparently a first cousin of Rey Mysterio, the Rey Mysterio we know and love, and a nephew of Rey Mysterio Sr., and had the Rey Mysterio name for a while in Mexico. And so, these are top talent guys from the West Coast and the, American lucha scene. It's a little strange Mysterioso Jr. isn't thrown in, but then again, the talent and everything, he's not quite to that level yet. So I am so excited to see this. And like I say, I hope that it's part of a bigger build for both New Japan in the U.S. and New Japan kind of branching out with guys that work with other companies. Yeah. Because it would be so nice to kind of see some of our AAA guys make appearances in New Japan. Interestingly enough, there's no Dragon Lee mentioned from Ring of Honor. And there are, other wrestlers from Ring of Honor. So kind of interesting there. And, his contract situation's up in the air. So that plays into a lot of it, just kind of exciting to see where things go. And New Japan may have some of the best lucha content coming soon. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan with a broadband internet connection.
It's true. It's true. So I have a little bit of extra detail on Clark Connors for everybody, because he's a Pacific Northwest based wrestler, or started out up here. He did work out up here many times with our Lucha Libre Volcanica, our school for Lucha Libre up here. So he does have experience with it. It's not really something he's ever advertised himself as, and you're probably not going to see a lot of it, but because he's a strong boy He's probably a good matchup for like a Rey Horus or a Lio Rush for somebody that can base for them. He left the area here to go to the New Japan Dojo, which is how he got this invitation. So he is a well-rounded wrestler that you probably won't see him win his first match, but you will see him look spectacular in it, is kind of where I'm at on that. Oh, and congratulations, Clark. If you listen to this, I'm excited to see what you do.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm excited to see that. So cool that you have a connection there.
This is a really diverse card, a very interesting card too, as far as people from all different promotions and parts of the independent scene. So this will be something that we will all keep our eyes glued to over the next few weeks. But with that, we are moving on to This Week in Lucha Libre History.
Yeah, that's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera for information, birth dates, anniversaries, match of the day, amazing videos, everything all about Lucha Libre at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week we have a special format for This Week in Lucha Libre, so I'm going to hand off to Brendan to start us out this week.
All right. So if you haven't guessed, the thing I was talking about at the beginning of the show is This Week in Lucha Libre, because This Week in Lucha Libre on November 6, 1994, the historic Worlds Collide pay-per-view happened in LA. And to many, many people, this is the beginning of Lucha Libre really expanding into the United States. Like, there'd been some dabblings. You probably saw, the WWF had luchadors performing in Texas for years before this, but it was one-off events. This was a full pay-per-view event that we got that was co-promoted with Eric Bischoff and WCW, greasing the wheels to get them on American pay-per-view. And then we got a full 5-card match of AAA and their American partner, the IWC, the International Wrestling Council. And they came to play. Like, this was 5 amazing matches that everybody will recognize the semi-main event, which was a tag team hair versus mask match between Octagon and Hijo del Santo against the La Pareja del Terror, which is Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero. Like, that is the famous match, but that was only the co-main or the semi-main, however you want to put it. The main event was an even bigger match. We'll go over all of the matches in a second, but this I had mentioned that I've been looking forward to this. This exact event was my big break into Lucha Libre and starting to follow that. Art Barr had been a Pacific Northwest wrestler. I followed his career down to WCW, and then he disappeared from the scene. It turns out that he had been in Mexico, and I found that out because WCW had been on their weekly shows, had been doing little vignettes with Mike Tenay, who at this point was an unknown personality other than he was their resident expert on Lucha Libre that was doing this. Yeah. And then he would do little vignettes every week to introduce us to the Lucha Libre culture. And as most people know now, that led to him doing bigger and better things, working with WCW on a full-time basis and then working with other promotions after that. So everything about this event was huge. This is the beginning of luchadors working in promotions like ECW and then moving on to the WCW. I'm going to stop rambling for a second. I'm going to turn it back over to you guys because I know you guys want to get some words in edgewise. So.
Yeah. And one thing we do want to note is that this show is available completely. It's like not on the WWE network, but it's available on YouTube completely free, the complete show. but I'm pretty sure whoever recorded it was like the one person who recorded it, because it's on YouTube, and I swear it has the same VHS artifacts as like my tape traded copy that I got in like 99. And so I think everybody had like one copy. And
well, you're right. I believe so. WWE.com has some clips of it, but very, very brief. So you get, but you know, again, the quality is it's not as shaky, but it's definitely VHS. So we're just spoiled now. But
it's still worth it. It's still worth it.
Yeah, it's still worth it. I mean, to me too, this was more of a learning experience because I definitely was too young to remember this, but also came in to Lucha Libre already when the relationship was more established with Lucha Libre and WCW and even ECW a little bit in there as well. So this was very cool to see, especially the classic Eddie Guerrero, just that look, everything he did before. I mean, we talked about it last week with his match with Rey Mysterio at Halloween Havoc, but this is also kind of like the secondary classic Eddie Guerrero look.
Yes.
And so that too I really liked from this particular show. And even the showcase of the minis with Mascarita Sagrada too.
That was my favorite match, actually. The minis match. And it was interesting to me how little they relied on the gimmickry of them being small. You think of the minis matches as being like minis matches, but this was an incredible tag team match that just happened to have short people in it. And it was also one of the hottest feuds. Mascarita Sagrada and Espectrito had been feuding back in CMLL. Mascarita Sagrada was the first champion, the world minis champion. So Espectrito had quite a feud with him. And so, like, this wasn't just a minis match to open the show. This is one of the hottest matches they had to open the show.
And, I mean, you want an opener that's grabbing everybody's attention, and it absolutely did. Like, it overperformed on everybody's expectations, I guarantee, except for probably Sagrada and Espectrito, who probably being massive perfectionists were disappointed.
And the charisma, like, holy cow. Like, I had seen matches with these guys, but aside from this, I hadn't seen, like, a whole lot of Espectrito. As Espectrito, he became known as Tarantula in the WWF. People might be more familiar with that. But his charisma in the ring is awesome. Like, he is really cool. He did the face paint instead of the mask because he'd already been unmasked at this point. And, like, it was awesome. Like, I really loved the minis match. And it was surprising how excellent it was. Surprising amount of high flying for a minis match, too.
Yeah, I mean, they were all over, and some brawling. I mean, they had everything in this.
Yeah.
They really did, and I loved the Rudos. They used their strength and their size to their advantage, but the Technicos, Mascarita Sagrada and Octagoncito, they were able to use their talent and their speed and just their knowledge of wrestling to win, and that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely always a contender for one of my favorite matches on this card, which is 5 of my favorite matches of all time.
It's hard
it's
to
a
pick.
stacked card. I mean, overall, the reception of this, not only now historically, but at the time, was really, really positive.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also why it seemed to have opened the door for Lucha Libre to a wider American audience, is because I definitely agree this was one of the first times that on a larger scale, Lucha Libre was presented, and the performances of each of the matches were done so well that I think it was just hard to deny Lucha Libre as just an art form, as this other segment of wrestling that fans didn't know about but wanted to see, and very different than the product that was already out there, with WWE and even WCW. So I think just historically, when I think about this and what we're talking about in This Week in Lucha Libre history, it really is a historical pay-per-view, but also just really good. And it wasn't like too overwhelming too. Like 5 matches, this in general now is just seem like, literally a Tuesday, or a Friday night or a Wednesday night. But I feel like the fact that they didn't overwhelm the card with too many matches, especially because that tag match was so long, played to the strength of the event as well.
So to your point though, everything had plenty of time to play out. The only one I don't have a timestamp for is the main event, but the shortest match was 8 minutes, which was the opener. And that was plenty of time for them because they were moving at such a pace. If they'd gone for 10 minutes, somebody would have probably had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then the longest match on the other night was 22 minutes, which was the tag team Apuestas match. Yeah. So they gave it all time to breathe and plenty of time to really let people get the feel for this. And then again, you had Mike Tenay explaining the differences, like why they do this in lucha versus what we're seeing in American style.
So good. I just love that. Like
it was awesome.
And the fact that they brought that in to WCW on that long-term basis, and he really became the voice for Lucha Libre in a way that was very approachable, that was direct, that was respectful. Like I will just always give kudos to Mike Tenay. I think he was always looking at kind of that third man out, because he wasn't, as dynamic maybe as Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Tony Schiavone took a lot of the lead. But Mike Tenay always just, addressed Lucha Libre with such respect and class, and but also informative and engaging that, it's one of my best memories as when I watched it as a kid in WCW. His voice really helped project and convey the way that it should have been. And so,
it just sounds right too. Like when you hear his voice with wrestling, like it just sounds right. As soon as you hear tonight, you're like, oh, I want to see this, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
So we talked about the first match. The second match was a 6-man, which had its own interesting, very kind of lucha twist to it, with Fuerza Guerrera, Madonna's boyfriend, who you might know better as Luis Piccoli, and Psicosis against a 19-year-old Rey Mysterio Jr., heavy metal and the Latin Lover, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they mentioned how young he was in this too. Like that was awesome. Yeah.
That's how I know he's 19, because you could not have told by the way he moved in that ring or the way he acted. I would have thought he was just the same age as everybody else and not this shiny new face that was about to just explode. They did predict in this that one of these men was going to be the face of Lucha Libre for years to come, and I don't think they even really were thinking to the scale that Rey Mysterio became. But
he's arguably the most famous luchador of all time now, just because of the omnipresence of WWE.
So you had Rey Mysterio and Psicosis on opposite sides of this, which became the feud that ECW brought with them when they showed up a year later in ECW. You had Heavy Metal, who was the son of one of the referees here, and kind of the big force going. I mean, this was just all kinds of things here. Guerrera and Luis Piccoli and Psicosis were ostensibly the bad guys, but this wasn't really like an American babyface versus heel sort of style. Like they were willing to cheat, but they were just as willing to fly around and put people in llaves. And I mean, it was.
There's a spot where Spicoli, or Madonna's boyfriend, picked up Rey Mysterio and throws him into the 4th row of the audience, and that's not even the biggest or the best spot of the match, and you're like, what's going? This is so good. I think that everybody went into it trying to steal the show and show America what they could do, and so the quality level in this is just insane.
Yeah. And then so we talked last week about Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, and I mentioned just how fast both of those guys were moving there. I literally looked away for a half second and missed Rey Mysterio moving completely across the ring and then outside the ring. Like that was, somebody said hi to me or something, and I looked back and he was outside the ring, and I had to rewind because I'm like, what the happened here? So yeah. Just amazing to watch. That this was much more of a let's see what we can do in that great lucha libre way that happened than some of the other matches that were on the card. And yeah,
this was just nonstop too.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how they kept going the whole time the way they did.
It's a 6-man match, and it was 12 minutes and 45 seconds. So basically, they all worked for about 2.5 minutes. So, that's the only way I can think of. It's amazing stuff.
It's so good.
Our next one was a complete change of pace.
Yeah.
You have the Pegasus Kid, Too Cold Scorpio, and Tito Santana. They were very clearly announced as representing IWC and being very American. And even though this show was in LA, it was a very pro-Mexico crowd. So they got a very mixed reaction. And they were in there against Jerry Estrada, La Parca, and the Blue Panther. And the storytelling in this was very different too. Mm-hmm. I'll let you guys talk about this one a little more. I'm a big Blue Panther fan. I was disappointed as a story point that he didn't get to do more Blue Panther-like things, but
yeah, it was cool to see Tito Santana. For me, he hadn't been on a pay-per-view appearance since SummerSlam 1992, so this was the first time he'd been on a pay-per-view in a couple of years, and the announcers even told us that despite his Mexican heritage, he had spent most of his time working in the U.S., and that meant he was the one least familiar with the Lucha Libre style. So they really set it up as Lucha Libre versus American style.
They did.
But the real story of the match was that there was a lot of issues between La Parca and Jerry Estrada. They couldn't get along. They fought over which one of them was going to get the pin, Too Cold Scorpio. And neither one of them did in the end. And it was just interesting. And
the Parker refused to take tags, which I thought was it's a classic prelude to the LA Park of the future, by the way.
Yeah, very interesting glimpse into LA Park in this one. And it was just I thought it was interesting that they, we were still early enough that they billed Chris Benoit as Pegasus Kid.
Yeah.
We were early enough into that it was, before he was a known entity. And the reversal he got on Blue Panther's powerbomb to win the match for his team was pretty impressive. I would have rather seen Blue Panther win. Big fan of Blue Panther as well.
Right.
But it was... a pretty great match, very good match.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the least remembered match on the show. And
I think it's because you had a little bit more of that American side too. And I didn't realize this, but I guess Too Cold Scorpio was with WCW up until not that long before this show ran. So he wasn't on contract with WCW, but participated in this, and I guess also the show that they did, the Collision in Korea that they did the year after. That in and of itself, but also because I think out of everybody on that US side, he in some ways makes the most sense, because he just has more of that hybrid style of wrestling, and that's just very apparent in this too. But also it was interesting to see Tito Santana, who is Hispanic and synonymous as a Hispanic wrestler, but not so much in lucha libre. He's more of an American wrestler, so there was just some of those dynamics for me that I was just more apparent and observed or just in this dynamic of the match, but I definitely noticed how different it was from the previous one. Much more of a slower pace because of the fact that you just had more of those American wrestlers, but I think it ended up working very well.
And it was a nice sort of cool off before.
Yeah, a break, because then afterwards, and then after that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the tag team match. Yeah, that's the match everybody remembers.
22 minutes of just insanity, and I'm going to quote Matt Farmer, noted historian, the best second fall in the history of second falls. I mean, and I've attempted to take that challenge, and I can't think of anything that comes close. So,
that's pretty accurate, actually.
Yeah. If you fans haven't seen this, you can find this match individually in a number of places, including on Lucha Central. It is going to be the match of the day on the day this goes up. So absolutely, if you don't have the 2 hours to watch the whole card and you haven't seen this tag team match yet, you really should do yourself a favor and go watch it. And if you have watched it, but you haven't watched it in a while, my God, watch it again, because there's things you probably forgot about. They cover a lot of ground in that match.
They really do. It's a rare double Apuestas match, double hair versus double mask.
Yeah.
Octagon and Elio Del Santo with Blue Panther kind of as their ringman versus the La Parrilla del Terror, Love Machine Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero with Madonna's boyfriend in their corner. And like, this was, it's such a good match. It was probably the match of the year back then. We didn't see wrestling like this back then. What you saw in WCW, WWF was not this. Yeah. And the crowd was, insane. Like, they could not have been more invested in this match. And they hated Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr, but they also loved Octagon and Elio Del Santo. Like, perfect crowd. I mean, and
LA would have burned if that guys.
Oh yeah, they despised Guerrero and Art Barr. Like, it was incredible. The atmosphere was electric. Like, it was so cool. And the action in the match is so technical and perfect and crisp and just amazing. But the drama with the Apuestas and everything, it was just so good.
So to the point that Conan made, and we've referenced a couple of times, Apuestas matches are big payoffs on this. And also in this week in Lucha Libre history is a match from a year before where Octagon and Hijo del Santo took the titles off of La Parrilla del Terror. So that tells you that were building to this match for at least a year, and this was the payoff for it. And again, they gave us the payoff on this kind of risky American invasion instead of putting in a AAA show. So they had a lot of faith in this, and it paid off big time. Because I cannot name a person that does not remember this match that says they're a Lucha Libre fan. Like, they all will talk about this match. And this was, again, I want to point out, this was only the semi-main, because you had an even bigger match in the main event. We had Perro Aguayo and Conan in a cage, and it had all the twists and turns of a long-term feud in this. Conan was still part of the evil non-Mexican faction.
Yeah.
And Perro,
he was the hated Conan and the much-loved Perro Aguayo. They said that like 100 times on the pay-per-view.
Once again, Tenay's voice told us that, and because it was Tenay saying it, we believed it. And, oh my goodness. There's not a lot you can say about this. I mean, you had so much going on. You just need to watch this match. You have good guys, you have bad guys invading, you have good guys coming out to chase them away, you have brass knucks, you have anything you've ever seen in a cage match probably happened in this match.
Yes. But it didn't feel like overkill either. Like, because in a case where you have so much happening, it didn't feel like overkill.
No, not at all.
No.
It was well paced, and by the end, you were so elated when Perro Aguayo won that, I mean, it was fine. Like, all of it was fine, even though you were terrified just 2 minutes before that.
It's true, though. That's exactly how it is. Like, yeah. And, like, Perro Aguayo, I mean, he looks like he's been in a steel cage match when it's over, too. Like, yeah. I mean, like, and then afterwards, there's, like, action on the outside, and I was like, well, somebody get Perro a towel.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. This was an incredible. There was no filler in the entire show.
Yeah.
Every match was of the highest quality. Like I say, the double hair versus double mask match was easily the highlight of the night, if not the highlight of the whole year in American wrestling. You've just got to see that. It was the last major appearance, maybe the last televised appearance period for Art Barr.
It was the last. Yeah, it was the last televised appearance. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, like Eddie for years and years did the Frog Splash afterwards, and as a memorial to Art Barr. And, like, this is your best chance to see what all that was about.
And so that brings us to the end of this week's special, this week in Lucha Libre history. This was, again, a different spin to it, but because this event was one that, of course, not only Brendan really anticipated in talking about, it really had an effect on Lucha Libre in the American audience and in the American scene, one that we all thought it would be great to discuss together. So, of course, there was lots of other events that happened throughout this week in Lucha Libre history. Again, you can go to luchacentral.com to check out this day in Lucha Libre history, and you could see information about all the events that happened, plus some videos that are also available through the Lucha Central YouTube page and luchacentral.com. But Brendan, I mean, you could tell us more about luchacentral.com, can't you?
Absolutely. If you're listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it's time to do it. Luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. A place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of all of this, it's free, which is really what I need right now. Free.
Mm-hmm. We could all use a little free in our lives.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, you want more Lucha Libre for free, luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Well, Brandon, while you're at it, we had the finals of the Ring of Honor Pure Tournament. So, of course, let us know what happened.
I feel like I bullied you guys into some segments here now.
No, well, I mean, I say, tell us what happened. Many of us know we have the internet. No, but I mean,
no,
I'd like to hear from you.
I just feel we're doing two segments of oh my God, these are things that I pushed for right back to back. But,
well, one of them I'm helping out with a little bit. So
yeah, no, I gotcha. ROH Pure Finals happened this week, and as I mentioned last week, it was a live event. We could all live watch it, and I had fun with that. They started off with a non-pure rules match, which was it was still a good ROH product, but not what I'm here for. So I'm gonna go straight into this. We had the finals for the Pure tournament with Jonathan Gresham and Tracy Hot Sauce Williams, and the story of this match going into it, they set this up. Jonathan Gresham had used 2 rope breaks and had wrestled for a significantly longer period of time than Williams did in the whole tournament. So, like, he had one match go the duration. He had used only 2 rope breaks through the whole tournament. So basically the story was, if this goes long, it favors Gresham. If Hot Sauce uses forces Gresham to use rope breaks. He's playing into Hot Sauce's game, and that may be the story of that. So we got all of that. Hot Sauce managed to make him use a rope break very early in the match, and then another one shortly after that, and then you saw the third one, and you started to believe maybe this is going to be a Hot Sauce pure title, right? Like that's where you're going, and then out of nowhere, Gresham hits a really tight looking submission, and Williams tapped, and that was it. Like, it was sudden, it was out of nowhere, but it was also after it had ticked past the 10-minute marker, which is where they were saying Gresham was favored at. So kind of everything they laid out for us happened, and it all happened in a great way. They started off exchanging holds and went back and forth in kind of a classic folk style, is what they call, like, the high school amateur style, and then they sped up a lot faster, and I mean, it's just a phenomenal, it's a match of the week for me. Like, nobody else had a product that had me this entranced as this match. So if you're an old school classic lucha grappling fan, this is definitely a good match for you to watch. I don't think I've spoiled anything by telling you, even though it came out of nowhere. The story of how you get to Gresham winning the pure title is fantastic, and the match that happens is superb. But there you have it. Congratulations to the Octopus, Jonathan Gresham, on being the ROH Pure Champion.
Seems like, too, we have a new faction that came out of his new title, of this title win.
I guess they're a new faction. It's kind of
I mean, that's what I say, I guess. I mean, like, can you?
It's kind of a revival of things that have happened in other places on the indies, but a lot of these guys that were kind of grapplers gravitated to being in a group together. And so now I think they're going to call themselves the Foundation, but you're going to have Gresham and Hot Sauce and a couple more of those guys that were in this pure tournament kind of standing up for, this is what we think Ring of Honor should stand for, and they're going to probably be taking that pure style out into the wild, as it were, and facing off with some of those brawlers and rule breakers that ROH had been kind of having a lot of prior to the COVID break. So I'd look forward to seeing how that plays out too. That should be very exciting.
Well, we are going to finish this week's show with a review of Primetime Live from the United Wrestling Network. This is great for especially all of you West Coast wrestling fans. If you are not a West Coast wrestling fan, then you need to be watching this. It's every Tuesday. You can get it on Fight TV app and apparently now on DirecTV. But you can see, we're going to be talking about someone we just talked about not that long ago, and a few other great matches. Brendan, what happened on Primetime Live? Since I already asked you about Ring of Honor.
Oh my goodness. So this one I don't feel guilty about, because you and I both love watching Primetime Live. Yeah. So I know you got me on this one. We started off with Miranda Alizé and Heather Monroe. And they actually started at a very lucha opening with this. I was a little surprised to see that, but then the announcers reminded me that Heather Monroe is a graduate of the Santino Brothers Academy. Yep. So you know that Joey Chaos is not going to let you out of there without learning a little bit about lucha libre.
Nah, yeah. If you are from Santino Brothers, you know some lucha. That, especially too, that part of California. That's more SoCal. So that's very much, even I would say, within California, the more that you are in Southern California, the more the influence is. I know it's also there in Central and Northern California, especially Central, I would say, but Northern California maybe not as much. But yeah, absolutely. Especially if you go to a school in Central to Southern California, it's just you can't escape it.
I mean, just, you know, Santino Brothers used to list Blue Demon as a teacher, so if he came north of the border to teach people, he wasn't gonna do it to waste his time. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So Heather and Miranda were Miranda Lee's, not our Miranda. I mean,
No, I'm not trained.
They were exchanging some lucha stuff. They started off very technical. And if you're familiar with Heather Monroe matches, you know that that's not going to last very long. Once she realizes that she could probably get just as good a result out of punching somebody in the face, that's what she's going to do. And so it kind of degraded from there. If you're talking about from a technical point, but from an excitement point, it kicked way up. And then eventually Heather was able to pull out what she calls a Bad Bichinoku, which is a really scintillating, is great looking Michinoku driver, and she got the win with that. Very, very cool match. I love more. We talked last week about Miranda Lee's hybrid lucha style, and now Heather Monroe's coming out with a hybrid lucha style. So the ladies division in the UWN's Primetime Live is really kind of bringing the lucha home. So do not sleep on this program if you are a lucha fan. You don't know where it'll come from. And so going into the week, the card looked very different than what we got. Yes, and this next match is a good example of that. So Lio Rush, who we talked about several times tonight, showed up, and he was wrestling against Fidel Bravo, who is a very lucha influenced wrestler as well. He's wrestled under a great number of names and gimmicks. All of them have been about his heritage, though. So he's very proud of having kind of a lucha heritage, and that was. So it was really neat to see him show up, even though we kind of knew that Lio Rush was probably going to run circles around him because he's trying really hard to make his big comeback right now, and this was kind of a setup for that. So they're promising to have Lio Rush back. I look forward to it, and I'm super excited to have seen Fidel Bravo on Primetime Live. Keep your eyes on him. He will be another big one to see in the future. And I mean, if you don't know by now to watch Lio Rush, then what are you doing, really? Yeah. And then another huge change, and this is the one that actually had me kind of saying some bad things to nobody in particular in my room, but because I didn't see it coming, and as soon as I did, I was shocked and amazed. We had Rocky Romero and Sean Daivari in the tournament for their heavyweight title. So I mean, lucha fans again, just crazy. This is a crazy matchup for you. You have Rocky Romero, whose early days are in CMLL, where he really started to make a name for himself. Was down in Mexico before he went to Japan. And then you have Sean Daivari, who was kind of a WWE guy, but when he was done with that, where did he show up? Lucha Underground. So, I mean, you know, you can't go wrong with this, with that pairing. And they had a fantastic match. And, Daivari actually came out on top of that one.
Yeah, that was a surprise. You have to admit it's a surprise, because Rocky Romero too has been a pretty regular staple in the United Wrestling Network. He wrestled a lot for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And so you would kind of think that he was going to be a shoo-in, but you know, the fact that Sean Daivari won.
Right. They were putting Rocky Romero over as one of their guys for sure. They mentioned that he won the PP3 Cup. For those of you that don't know, that's Percival Pringle III. So they just shorted it down to the PP3 Cup, and that's their version of Money in the Bank, and he won that, and that was that led to him having one of their belts. They said that they were portraying him, to Miranda's point here, about portraying him as being the local guy, and he's the bigger name. Let's be honest. I had to look up which Daivari was in the ring to be positive I was talking about the right one, but everybody knows who Rocky Romero is. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. So the tournament has been turned on its head. Primetime Live is giving us a nice little upgrade at the last second without telling us, which tells me that I can't stop watching it. I can't just rely on the fact that they're gonna stay at the same level. They're gonna keep adding more and more big names and big matches.
Yes, yeah. So make sure you tune in to the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live. Again, you can find that on the Fight TV app and apparently on DirecTV every Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. And with that, well, we've made it to the end of another episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to this week's show. Make sure that you check out luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. And you follow Lucha Central on social media. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Lucha Central. And you can find them on Twitter at luchacentral.com. Of course, you got to check out the YouTube page. There's lots of matches and interviews that are available to you. Again, lots of hidden gems on there. So make sure you check out the Lucha Central YouTube page. And well, while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
Yes, I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, and I am on Facebook, facebook.com/Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's 321 the numbers, T-shirt spelled out, guy. And I'm on Instagram. I logged in twice this week. I feel like that's an accomplishment for me. I've got Facebook and Twitter. Twitter is where I spend a lot of my time. Wrestling Twitter this week has been a lot of fun, and please drop me a line if you're on Twitter. I will even take messages for Miranda. We haven't mentioned that in a while, but
yes, that's also true. Because I, Miranda Morales, am not on Twitter, so you won't be able to find me there. So you can go and message Brendan at 321 T-shirt guy. But me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda, spelled out. And while you are following us on social media, feel free to leave us a message. Let us know what you think of the show. And you can also do that through your favorite podcast streaming platform. So make sure that you subscribe, rate, and review our show. You can subscribe and you can get alerts letting you know when this show drops every week. You can rate us. We'd love a 5-star rating. And also you can leave us a review. Let us know what you think about the show. Give us some ideas on topics that we can focus on in the future, and any just random and general thoughts you may have about the show and the state of Lucha Libre. So make sure that you do all of those things because, well, we'd love you to do it. But more importantly, make sure you come back next week to listen to the next episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. We do this every week, letting you know what's happening in the world of Lucha Libre. So for Dusty Murphy and Brendan Barr, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Respetable público, lucharán a